I didn't know the woman in the photograph, but she had my voice trapped in her phone, breathing gently, whispering my name in the dark like she'd been listening to me sleep. The first time I heard it was a Tuesday, late September, after a 12-hour shift at the urgent care off Route 219. The kind of shift that leaves your brain buzzing like a fluorescent light. I rent a second-floor unit above a nail salon in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. The stairs smell like acetone and old carpet. The woman with the photo came up those stairs, trailing damp night air and the piney smell of the river, clutching her phone with both hands, like an egg. She couldn't have been more than 40, shoulders pinched, soft brown hair pinned back in the wrong decade. She didn't knock so much as hover, and when I opened my door she flinched like I'd caught her stealing. "Are you Miles?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Already sorry, because people only ask your name like that when they need something you don't have." "I'm Tessa," she said. "I think you called me last night." She held up her phone. On the screen, one missed call at 2:07 a.m., unknown. One voicemail at 2:08. She pressed play with a trembling thumb. What came out of the tiny speaker was the sound I never noticed I made when I first wake. A flat, dry inhale like paper unfolding. Then my voice, low, confused. "Tessa," it whispered. "Tessa, it's me. I'm outside." I felt my stomach tugged downward, like an elevator stopping between floors. "I didn't call you," I said, and then, because that sounded like a lie, I was asleep. She studied me, as if deciding whether that mattered. Then she turned the phone around again and swiped to a photo. The pictures showed two women at a picnic table by a lake. One was Tessa. The other had gray in her hair and a fox's grin. They wore matching camp t-shirts, Camp Laurelwood. The old woman's hand rested on Tessa's wrist. Over the image, the phone's default gallery app had thrown up a date stamp, September 26th. Beneath it, someone had written in blue marker on the printed version, Marcel Laurelwood 98. Only this was a digital image. The handwriting wasn't real, but it looked it, the way phones like to make the past cute. "That's Marcy," Tessa said, a beat like a swallowed sob. "My sister. She died in July." There's a way people say died when it's soft, like a knuckle knocking on wood. Tessa said it like she was chewing glass. In urgent care, you see the ordinary ways people get broken stirs. Speed, a fist that went a half-inch too far. You get used to bandaging the aftermath while the core sputters in the back of their throat. I've learned not to ask, but I asked anyway. "How?" "Water," she said. She told me she thought the voicemail was a prank. She'd blocked the number. This afternoon, at a red light near the old steel mill, her phone buzzed with a new voicemail from an unknown number. She played it and heard the same breathing, the same whisper. "Tessa, it's me. I'm outside." The sunlight on her windshield had made the dust on the glass look like snow. She'd turned around at the next block and driven to the address the voicemail listed. Not an address, exactly my address. The message had ended with a clumsy, slow repetition of my street, my number, my town, as if the caller were reading the world letter by letter. "I don't know you," she said, "but your voice knows me." I wanted to tell her we'd sorted out, that there were apps that could fake a voice, that I sleep-talked, that she'd pressed something wrong. I wanted, for both our sakes, To believe we were still inside the part of life where things have explanations you can write down without your hand shaking. Instead, I heard myself asking, "When did your sister drown?" "July 3rd, she said. "The lake behind our mum's church." The date jammed somewhere between my ribs. July 3rd had been a bad night in urgent care, fireworks and fingers. A man had come in with hands shredded by a mortar. I'd spent an hour flushing his palms. After midnight, an older woman in a green nightgown had wandered into the lobby and asked me to call her daughter. "She's still in the water," the woman had said, licking her lips, voice full of algae. We hadn't been able to find a daughter in the system. The woman had disappeared before security could walk around. I didn't tell Tessa any of that. I told her to come inside. My apartment was all the ways I pretended to be busy. Unopened boxes under the table, a TV balanced on a plastic crate, an industrial fan turning its head as if it could find a cooler part of the air. Tessa sat on the end of the couch like a woman waiting for bad news. I poured water we didn't drink. We put my phone next to hers on the coffee table like two beetles faced off. And then, because we had to prove something, we dialed my own number from Tessa's phone. It went straight to voicemail. We left a message with nothing but breathing. We waited, we watched, we prayed to nothing. 2 minutes later, both our phones lit at once. Unknown. Voicemail. Unknown. Voicemail. We didn't touch them, and yet they played. "Tessa, it's me. I'm outside." The voice was mine, but it wasn't speaking now. It had spoken already. It had been placed somewhere like a trap, and in the background, under my words, there was water. The police dispatcher told us, gently but firmly, that prank calls and spoofed numbers were a thing now, that nobody was outside, that if anyone was actually outside, we should lock the door and dial 911. Tessa nodded at the receiver as if the voice could see her obedience. When she hung up, the room felt like a theater after the movie Stop Slides to White, Carpet Too Loud. Be suddenly aware of strangers breathing near you. My fan kept sweeping its head, slow and useless. It was still raining, a thin, stubborn drizzle that had been going since morning, and the air tasted metallic like old coins. "We should go outside," Tessa said. Every neuron in me voted no. We went anyway. The hallway smelled like wet cardboard and polish from the salon downstairs. A fluorescent tube was dying above the landing, buzzing and flickering, so the stairwell pulsed in slow motion like a heartbeat. The front door's window was beaded with rain, and when I put my hand on the glass, I expected cold. Instead, it was room temperature, as if the door had decided to be part of the apartment. The sidewalk was empty. The nail salon's closed sign shone pink against the steam inside the glass. The street light made raindrops into thin silver wires. Tessa folded her arms tight against herself. "If it was your voice," she said, "then it came from your phone, right?" She looked up at my windows. "What if it recorded you? Like a parrot. Parrots repeat," I said. "This knows my address. It knows you." My phone, in my pocket, vibrated, the kind of buzz that isn't an alert as much as a cough. I took it out. No icons on the screen, no notifications, just the time and a fogged thumbnail impression of my face reflected. Then it vibrated again twice, like a stutter. Tessa's pocket answered with 2 quick chirps. We stared at each other like 2 kids who swear they didn't touch the Ouija planchette. "Don't," she said softly when I went to unlock it. "Let's go back up." On the landing, the flicker stopped. The light held steady, as if someone had pressed a hand to it. I heard, distinctly, water moving on the other side of my apartment door. Not a leak, not a drip, but the low hiss of something being poured into carpet. I fumbled the keys. Tessa's breath rose and fell too fast. The lock turned. The door opened. The sound stopped. The apartment smelled like river rock and damp tobacco. My shoes squeaked, except everything was dry. The only wet thing was a circular dark spot on the coffee table where one of the phones had been, as if condensation from a glass had left a ring. But the glasses were still full on the counter, untouched. The ring was too wide for a tumbler to clean. I put my palm on it. The wood was colder than the rest of the table. An edge of winter nested inside summer. My phone woke on its own. A voicemail had arrived and queued itself, but there was no notification, banner, no number. It just sat on the lock screen like a raised mole. I tapped it. The message played. Not my voice, not hers. A woman, older. That algae-thick tone I remembered from July 3rd. Miles, the voice said, using my name like a secret. Don't make her go back to the lake. Tessa grabbed my wrist. Play it again, I tried. The voicemail wasn't there anymore. The list was empty. I checked the folders, the deleted bin. Nothing. We both heard it. My heart beat in my teeth. Who was that? She asked. Someone who's been in my lobby, I said, and then, relenting, I don't know. Her phone lit too. The lock screen photo, a default waterfall, glitched, and for half a second showed two women in matching camp t-shirts, one with a fox grin, a hand on the other's wrist. Not a photo, more like a negative evaporating. Then the waterfall returned, innocent and tourist. I need you to hear something, Tessa said. She opened her voice memos. Listen to the background, not your voice. Behind it, she played the first voicemail again. The same breath, the whisper, Tessa. It's me, I'm outside. But under that, now that she had pointed, you could hear a wind that wasn't wind, not trees. A hollowing, as of air being pulled through a throat that wasn't meant to be a pipe. Inside that hollowing, a rhythmic thud like oars mixing with flesh. Rowboats, Tessa said. Laurawood had a dock. At night, the chain would bang the posts in the waves. Thunk, thunk. Marcy used to sneak out. You mentioned a church, I said. Lake behind it. Saint Casimir. The priests fish there sometimes. She backed away from her own phone, as if distance might take the sound away. You heard that other voice. If that was my mother, your mother. She died when we were kids, Tessa said. Marcy told me once. She swallowed, jaw trembling in a way that wasn't about tears. Told me once that when she snuck out of camp in '98, she thought Mom was calling her back to bed. But when she got to the bunkhouse, it was empty, and the voice was still outside. We stood in my living room like the set of a play after the actors left. Rain scratched the window screens. The fan kept moving its sad head. I wanted it to stop, wanted everything mechanical to stop so I could hear the thing under the thing, the chain against the posts, the air pulled down a throat. I said, we have to go to the lake. Tessa shook her head so hard, loose hair broke free and stuck to her cheeks. No, she'll be waiting. She thinks I left her there. She always teased me, said I was the careful one, the one who sleeps with my shoes by the door. If we go, she asked me to take them off. It's not your sister asking, I said. and wished I hadn't. She looked at me like I'd just untied something that had been holding her together. The lights flickered once, then stayed. Somewhere in the building, a pipe knocked 1, 2, 3 times like oars thunking wood. "Okay," she said finally. "We go in the morning. When it's light, we don't get out of the car." My phone buzzed a single time, as if agreeing. We didn't sleep. We lay on opposite ends of the couch, like patients under observation. Every so often the building exhaled. At 3:13 a.m., I woke from a thin, bright dream with the sense that someone had leaned very close to repeat my name in a voice full of silt. The apartment was dark, except for the weak blue of the TV's input screen. Tessa was awake, eyes open, counting breaths. Somewhere, water moved, without moving anything. We left just after 7, when the rain thinned to mist and the town looked like someone had breathed on the world and not wiped it clean. Route 219 ran past the hulked-out mill where someone had spray-painted "Pray Here" across the loading bay door. Tessa didn't look at it. She held herself like a too-full cup in a moving car. I drove the way you hold scissors careful. Blades turned toward me. The air smelled like wet leaves and hot brake pads. The closer we got to St. Casimir, the more the radio found nothing but snow. The only clear station was playing a Colleen show about debt that sounded like it was being broadcast from the bottom of a jar. "We're not getting out," Tessa said for the 5th time. "We're not," I agreed, for the 4th. Google Maps rerouted twice, even though the route was straight. The blue line kept dragging us to the cemetery behind the church, then yanking itself back like a dog that remembered it wasn't allowed. When we turned onto the road that ran along the lake, my phone battery dropped from 80 to 15 in one blink. Tessa's did too. She made a small sound people make when pain surprises them. I killed the radio. The silence wasn't silent. It was hush layered over hush, the small noises lakes make when they have secret. Reeds scratching each other, the thin breath of water against the shore, the occasional heavy gulp of something big that never breaks the surface. St. Casimir is white and tired and set back from the water like it regrets eavesdropping. The gravel lot had 2 cars, a dented pickup with a busted taillight and a maroon sedan with a rosary swinging from the mirror. A man in a yellow raincoat stood on the fishing dock with his back to us. He had a posture that suggested he'd been standing a long time and had forgotten what it was for. The dock bobbed in place, with a rhythm like a sleeping thing's breath, thunk-thunk. "Do you see her?" Tessa asked, which would have been nonsense any other morning. "No," I said. "I see a man in a raincoat." "That's Father Reese," she said, squinting. "He hates the rain." "How do you know?" "Everyone in my mother's church knew," she said, and then he did the funeral. We didn't get out. We didn't even unbuckle. Our breath fogged the windshield as if the car were filling with us. The lake was a coin under a low sky. On the far side, the old camp buildings were just darker rectangles among the trees, private shapes pretending to be ordinary. My phone woke itself. No banner, no app, just a voicemail icon glowing like a pupil. I thumbed it. The message opened to static that wasn't random. It had intention, the way a held breath has intention. Then my name, the syllables pushed through gravel. Miles. The voice was the woman from July 3rd. "You forgot your shoes," she said softly. "Put them by the door." Tessa made a brittle noise. "Mum," she said without thinking, the way people say "fire" or "please." The man on the dock turned a few degrees, not enough to show his face. His raincoat creaked. I noticed he had no rod in his hands, only the idea of waiting. The chain on the dock post thudded the boards again. Thunk-thunk, under it, something thinner. A quick rattle as though nails tapped the plank from beneath, counting. My phone offered a second voicemail. The timestamp said to 08 a.m., but the date was wrong. September 26, 1998. It shouldn't have even been possible. Tessa's phone vibrated out a warning like a hornet. Same voicemail icon. Same wrong date. We didn't play hers. We didn't need to. All at once, my side mirror filled with a girl's face, young wet hair stuck flat. Eyes open the way people open eyes in photographs when the flash catches them by surprise. She wasn't outside the car, she wasn't behind it. She was in the mirror the way a word lives in a throat. I turned my head fast enough to hurt, and of course no one was there. In the glass, though, she still was. A second image, like a reflection whose owner had decided not to commit. "Marcy," Tessa whispered, but not to me. The raincoat man lifted his right hand like a priest and then put it down without doing anything with it. He hadn't looked at us once. The rosary in the maroon sedan clicked against the glass as if someone had flicked it and then settled. The lake breathed. Our phones laid more icons on the lock screens, like the car was a table and someone was dealing us out. Voicemail, voicemail, voicemail. Each one with a different date from that summer. July 3rd, July 12th, August 1st. The battery numbers fell like an elevator that forgot what floors were. "We need to go," I said, but my foot didn't move to the pedals. The chain thudded, thunk-thunk. Closer now, or louder. The sound started to feel like a word I couldn't translate. Tessa put her palm flat on the glass. She hated rowboats, she said, a child's voice in a grown woman's throat. She'd always say, "You row backward. You can't see where you're going." And I'd say, "You'll know when you get there." She closed her eye. She walked out on July 3rd because my mother was dead and she wanted to sleep like she used to, with someone telling her what to do. Something tapped the rear passenger window. 3 soft knocks, like a knuckle politely requesting entrance. I looked. Nobody. The glass, on the inside, misted in the shape of a handprint and then slowly erased itself as if embarrassed. In the side mirror, the girl's mouth moved. No sound. Tessa leaned closer, breath fogging the mirror, and made an awful, surprised sound. She's mouthing my name backward. What does that sound like? It doesn't, she said, terrified. It looks like she's pulling it out of her throat, one letter at a time. The raincoat man finally turned. His face was wrong in a way that would sound cheap if I said it out loud. Not monstrous, not melting, just arranged for someone else's expression. A face remembering how to use itself. He lifted his hand again. This time he pointed past us, not at the lake but at the church steps. A woman in a green nightgown stood there, hair dark and long, hands at her sides as if tied. Water dripped from the hem and made little dark coins on the stone. I know how grief looks. This wasn't grief. This was invitation. "I'm not getting out," Tessa said, and fumbled the lock anyway. I put my hand on her wrist. "You don't have to. We didn't come for her. We came to tell her we're not going." The car's vents exhaled cold air that smelled like the lake's throat. My phone chimed one more time. The transcription tried to make a sentence out of static and failed. It gave me 3 words: stay, her, outside. The raincoat man lowered his arm. The nightgown woman on the steps tilted her head, listening to something we couldn't. In my mirror, the girl's mouth stopped moving. "Say it," Tessa whispered to me, as if I were the person with authority here. "Say it so she hears." I leaned toward the windshield like it was a mouth. "We heard you," I said. "We're not coming out." The lake held its breath. The chain struck the post once, like a gavel. Then, softly, like apology, the rain started again. We didn't break the stair first. The lake did. Something invisible moved under its skinner long. Slow undulation, like a sigh, too big for lungs. The nightgown woman blurred at the edges as if she were a reflection, deciding which surface it belonged to. The man in the yellow raincoat stepped back from the dock without turning. A moment later, he was at my driver's side window with the steadiness of someone who hadn't walked but arrived. He knocked once with 2 fingers, like a teacher calling for silence. I cracked the window an inch. Cold lake air poured in, and with it the scent of old rope and lilies rotting sweet. "Father Reese," Tessa said. "Small." He nodded like he was agreeing to be renamed. Up close, his face was all right angles and incorrect light. Rain found his eyelashes and then didn't fall. Instead, it clung there, trembling, deciding. His mouth didn't open when he spoke. The sound came from the space between the cracked window and the door frame, as if the car itself translated him. "You heard it," he said. "Good. You didn't go out. Good." "We're leaving," I said, and the word leaving hung in the car like a mistake. He put 1 finger against the glass. Water beaded under it on the inside, a perfect clear circle widening until it ran in a line down to the door handle. "It doesn't need you outside," he said. "It only needs the part of you that believes outside is safety." Behind him, the woman on the steps didn't move. Her nightgown's hem left no wet on the stone anymore. The chain at the dock thudded the post, deliberate and slow. Thunk, thunk. Counting something I didn't want to see added up. "Marcy," Tessa said, like throwing a rope. Father Reese's eye ticked. "The lake is a parish like any other. It remembers the names of its dead. It keeps record." He looked at me, and I felt catalogued. "On July 3rd, you took a message from one of my parishioners. She had already stopped breathing 2 hours before. Sometimes, in these cases, we find the voice insists on finishing its errands." "How do you know that?" My voice was too loud. Who was she?" "Teresa," he said mildly. "Names matter to water. I would not speak the other name here." Tessa swallowed. "My mother," she said, but so soft it barely qualified as sound. Rain whispered against the car like gossip under a choir loft. My phone chimed. Another voicemail stamped with 1998. Tessa's chimed too. He tilted his head at the sound, approving. "It copies the world the way water does," he said. "What lies over it, it carries. What leans close, it keeps." "We grew up on this lake," Tessa said, shaking. "If it remembers, why is it using his voice?" The priest turned his face toward me as if adjusting for focus. He was the first to answer, he said. He said, "Come in," without opening a door. "The machines are lakes with light in them. They like a door." Exactly a month ago, in a bright lobby that never gets warm, an old woman in a green nightgown, licking her lips, had asked me to call her daughter. I had said, Because we say it when we don't know what else to do. Come in, I'll check for him. I looked away from the priest because I didn't want the precision of what I did done placed on me like a hand. What happens if she goes out? I asked. The raincoat twitched as if a little bird inside it had shifted. He looked at the woman on the steps with open affection or grief. I couldn't tell. She'll find what she believes she lost, he said, and she'll give away something she hasn't lost yet. She will be loved without air, which is to say, not loved at all. The nightgown woman lifted her head like something at depth had tugged a string tied to her jaw. Her mouth moved. The glass translated. Teresa, it said, sweet as warm milk. To silt at the bottom of the word blinking in and out. Shoes by the door, darling. Tessa flinched, like a dog that hears the tone its owner uses with treats and syringes. Mum, she said, we're not children. Where her voice broke cleanly. I didn't leave you. You left us. In the side mirror, the girl's face came back closer, water laying her hair flat like hands. Her lips shaped something long and wrong. Tessa whispered, she's saying my name backward again. And then, no, she's saying my name, the way we said prayers in camp, faster each night, until it wasn't words, until it was just breath. My phone opened on its own. The transcription, usually a desperate mess of guesswork, was suddenly neat as a typed prayer. It displayed 3 lines. Marcy did not call. She was called. Do not answer yourself. What does that mean? I asked no one. It means the voice that sounds like yours isn't you, Father Reese said. It means if you answer that voice, you teach the lake that your name belongs in its mouth. How do we stop it? Tessa's hands were white on her knees. Tell me like I'm 10. Names should be kept dry, he said. Say your name, then say where it ends. Say where you end. State your edges. Do it out loud. Do it together. Tessa stared. That's stupid. That's liturgy, he said. He stepped back, and with the same ghostly wrongness as before, he was at the dock again. A yellow parenthesis on the wet wood. The chain thudded. The woman on the steps turned toward the lake without moving her feet. The mirror girl put her palm to the inside of the glass, and it matched my cuticle. Small, cold, precise. She was not Marcy. She was a beautiful copy speaking a remembered cadence. I could feel it the way a word loses meaning if you repeat it long enough. Outside, outside, outside. Okay, I said. Okay, I'm Miles. I am the person inside my body. I go from my scalp to my soul. My blood is mine. My voice is mine. It doesn't live in glass. Tessa shut her eyes. I'm Teresa, but it belongs to me when I say it. I'm Tessa when I want. I end at my skin. I do not go into water unless I mean it. My sister's name is her name. It is not a net. The car felt sturdier. The air stopped smelling like rope and started smelling like air. The mirror girl blurred as if someone had breathed on her and wiped her away. The nightgown woman on the steps turned her head sharply toward us, face full of something unmistakably human and mean disappointment or hungeround. Then she was a smear of darker rain dissolving into lighter rain. The dock chain went silent. The priest lifted a hand in benediction that might have been apology. You'll have to keep doing it, he said without lips. It'll keep asking. It keeps what it's given. The messages kept stacking on the lock screen, impotent as bills you can't pay yet. We drove away. The church got small in the mirror. The radio found music again. A song about summer from a decade that hadn't ended yet, when Marcy walked into the dark. Tessa held her breath for 3 beats, then exhaled like giving up a possession, steady and slightly furious. "I want to see our old bunkhouse," she said, before sunset. "If we have to tell the water no, I want to do it where she said yes." We cut over to Camp Laurelwood, the way you cut to a memory, in silence, with a stomach-bruised certainty that what you've read about to see already happened and can be stopped. The gate was chained with a thin length of rust that had more memory than metal. Someone had painted "Keep Out" in a red that the rain was in the process of teaching to forget. I parked on the shoulder under pines that shook themselves like dogs. The sun had lowered to that copper coin edge where all shadows get long and religion sneaks back in. Tessa stared through the windshield, lips moving Egger's liturgy, I realized. I ended my skin. She checked her shoelaces, like they were electrical connections. The bunkhouses were sleeping animals in a wet field. Wood siding furred with lichen, windows blind with grime. As kids, we call these places cabins. As adults, we call them deferred maintenance. The one Tessa led us to had 8 doors along a long porch, and a bell on a hook that used to call girls from the lake. From counselors' gossip, from the wrong kind of touch in the shadows. The bell's clapper was gone. The hook was a throat with nothing to say. Inside the air was that moving kind of cold that's somehow older than winter. Dust held the shape of last summer's laughter. On the left, a row of cubbies with faded masking tape labels. Kim, Jess, Shante, Marcy. Tessa's hand hovered over Marcy and didn't touch. The slap of sandals, imagined, kept trying to enter from another year. At the end of the room, bunks stacked too high waited like ribs. Something had dragged wet across the floor recently, a parabola of darker wood leading from the door toward the back wall where the paint was bubbled like a healed burn. "There's no plumbing," I said, "because people narrate when they're near panic. There shouldn't be water." "She," Tessa said, not to me, to the room. Our phones stopped pretending. No lock screens, no icons, just a blat that wasn't off, a listening blat. From somewhere under the floorboards came the slow thunk of chain against post, traveled into bone by wood. Thunk, thunk. The room was so quiet it felt like a held breath between gulps. I put my hand on a bunk frame. It thrummed like a cello, trying not to. A Guernsey's voice rose through the floor, as if a throat had been pressed to the seam between boards. "Tessa," not a whisper. A child calling across a night too big. A second voice braided through it older, wet with authority. "Cereza." The combined sound made a braid in her name, tightened it until the consonants clicked. "No," Tessa said to the voices, to something in herself. She walked to the cubbies, pulled a bent paperclip from her pocket like a rosary substitute, and scratched over the label that said Marcy. Not to erase it, to underline it. She said, clear and furious, "That's your name. You keep it." The wall bubbled. A dark circle spread across the blistered paint, and then ran down in a line that should have been water, but moved wrong. Bit of vertical tide that climbed as it fell. It struck the floor with a sound that wasn't T-splash so much as a full mouth finding itself. The dragging wet parabola brightened, the wood drinking it faster and faster until the edges of the room seemed to breathe. Our shoes glimmered. The room stopped being level. The bunks leaned toward the back wall like the whole building had remembered the lake's slope. Tessa, the floorboard throat, sang. Shoes by the door. She went very still. Then, precisely, she knelt and tightened both laces into double knots. No, she said, looking up into the rafters like they were a face. You don't get them. The back wall blister popped with a soft, obscene sigh. Something came through, not water exactly, not air, not smoke, but a temperature and a sheen and a memory of weight. I felt it roll over my shins like someone tested my skin with their mouth. Our phones woke. The black listening became an image. The inside of the bunkhouse, as if filmed from just beneath the floor. The boards above us, backwards. Our shoes the only bright things. In the phone view, there were more feet than our scald pale toes, without bodies, all pointed toward the door like obedient children. Don't look, I said, and of course we looked. Behind us in the screen, a figure stood in the doorway where we come in. A girl with hair slicked to her head, eyes to silver coins cloudy with use. Not Marcy. Close enough to betray you. Teresa, the older voice soothed, but I heard the breath under it sucking, the way an empty jug sings when you tilt it. Come, be good daughters. The bunkhouse exhaled. The floor flexed. The wet dragging line across the boards moved 2 inches toward us, not toward the door. Toward the back wall, beneath the bubbled paint, toward whatever was leaning in, a current in reverse. When you row, you face where you've been. When you drown, you arrive at where you looked last. I thought of the priest. Do not answer yourself. A new voicemail opened itself on my phone. No audio this time, just text in a neat hand, as if written in breath on glass. Give me the shoes. Give me the names. The chain thunked, counting while the room leaned, while the girl in the doorway was still and wrong and patient. Tessa's eyes shone with a salt that didn't belong to this place. I did the only stupid, liturgical thing I had. I took a Sharpie from my pocket. It's an urgent care habit. You never know when you need to label a wristband, and drew a line on my forearm from wrist to elbow. I am Miles, I said, voice shaking but present. I start here. I touched my wrist. I end here. I touched my elbow. My name stays dry. Tessa followed like she'd been waiting for an order. She drew bold lines up both calves. I am Teresa, she said. I am Tessa when I want. My name is not a door. The Notwater hesitated. It's insane to say that. But I felt it the consideration of a thing that had learned and preferred consent. It had been given so many open mouths over the years. Suddenly, 2 closed. The screen flickered. The girl in the doorway looked down at our shoes like she had not been told people could keep things. The older voice tried again, sweeter, and this time the bunkhouse did something I will never be able to explain. It lifted, not much, a breath's worth. The floor unclenched. The wet circle at the wall ran backward into the blister, into the paint, into the idea that there had ever been a hole here, into zero. The chain outside hit the dock post once, not like a count, but like a period. Tessa smiled, a small, mean miracle of a smile. No, she said, not to a person, but to a habit. Something under the floor went from wanting to listening. For the first time all day, I believed we could walk back out of a room we had come into. Then the phone in Tessa's pocket rang not, a voicemail chime. Not the soft cough of a buzz, but her old childhood number, the landline. she'd rattled off to every teacher and coach. It lit her screen as if there was still a house at the end of that wire. It began to leave a message, and this time the voice wasn't mine, wasn't her mother's. It was Tessa's, aged down to 9, unscarred, calling from a kitchen where a light over a calendar had turned the air gold. "Marcy," the little Tessa said, laughter inside the question. "If you go, take my shoes." Tessa's hand shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. The edge's liturgy turned to paper in her mouth. She swallowed and said, "Small and brutal, I end at my skin. I end," she choked, reaching. I caught her wrist. "Don't answer," I said. "Don't answer yourself." The phone listened like a lake. The phone kept recording while nothing spoke, which is somehow worse than when something does. The little red line crawled to 8 seconds, 10, 13, as if time itself were leaving a message for later. The room leaned toward the back wall again, subtle, greedy. The bubbled paint pulsed like a throat deciding to swallow. Tessa, the child in the kitchen, said softly, a little out of breath from laughing, "If you go, take my shoes." Tessa's jaw spasmed the way it does when a person is holding back 3 different years at once. I watched her face separate, the present woman with double-knotted laces, the teenager who had stayed in the bunk while the brave ones went, the little girl dialing a number because a sister promised adventure. All 3 looked at me through her eyes and asked for instruction. I didn't have any that would look sensible later. "Let it finish," I said. "Then we answer with our own message." She nodded once. A soldier taking orders past sense. The recording line hit 20:25 and stopped by itself. A saved icon blinked. The air tasted like copper wire heated on a stove. The floorboards released the tension hiding in their grain. Underneath, the chain hit the dock post with impatient punctuation. Thunk. We had a minute. Tessa opened her voice memos and hit record. No script, no edits. She stared at the bubbled wall and spoke to it the way you speak to a gravestone when you re alone enough to try. "I'm Theresa Lane," she said, voice shaking only at her last name. "I end at my skin. I keep my shoes. I loved Marcy as much as anybody could love and stay. I am not outside." Her phone caught the words and made them into a shape. She played the recording back. The room changed temperature, not warmer, but inhabited by something that had a spine and chose not to bend. "This is the part people will tell you sounds fake. Like how the dead turn up their noses at garlic. But the knot water sheened away from our ankles like we had peed in it. The blister in the paint held on popping, a decision not to open its mouth again. The floor's slope corrected until the bunks didn't lean. The doorway girl was there, and then only the idea of having been. The chain outside hit the post once, gentle as a priest's fingers on your forehead. The phones in our pockets went quiet like stunned animals. She sent the memo to me. "Back up," she said, and then flinched as if the word had teeth. I played it aloud on my phone so the room would hear it from another mouth and know the world agreed. The landline call from childhood had left a voicemail in her inbox anyway. It waited with the low, dangerous patience grief has when you decide not to feed it. Tessa stared at the notification the way people stare at a cliff they once thought of jumping off. She didn't press play. She pressed and held, and when the delete prompt offered her a chance to recover later, she slid her thumb without ceremony. "You don't get to keep me," she said to her own history. "I'm not an inheritance." We walked out. It wasn't dramatic. No doors slammed. No wind did the job of God. We stepped into wet, ordinary air. The pines were still arguing in their upper branches. At the string of lake through the trees, the water lay blank as sheet metal. By the main clearing, the bell without a clapper had tilted itself a degree toward the lake, as if listening harder. Father Reese was waiting by the camp sign, raincoat open to show a black sweater, so thin each rib was an admission. He kept his hands visible, palms empty. "It will ask again," he said. Apology threaded him. "It asks in my own voice," Tessa said. "I didn't know you could be haunted by yourself. That's the only way that sticks," he said. "The others pass on where the water's cold. But the version of you that still believes she'll try forever." "I deleted her," she said, and then a little savage smile snuck into her mouth like a fox testing a henhouse door. "I'll keep deleting her," he nodded. "Blessed are the boundaries," he said, and it sounded almost like a joke he hated himself for making. He looked at me. "You said come in. You can say it again the right way." I knew what he meant, and I stood there anyway, letting the sentence form the way a knot forms on a rope when you're almost too cold to tie it. I lifted my phone and recorded my own memo, sloppy with adrenaline. "I'm Miles. I go from scalp to souls. I'm the only person who answers to my voice. What lives in glass can't borrow my name." I sent it to Tessa. We made 2 more recordings, one that said no, and one that said try the church, not the lake. It felt dumb and small, and it worked on the part of me that needed to be talked to color by number. On the drive back, the radio let us have music without asking us to trade for it. We passed the spray-painted "Pray Here," and Tessa said, "No, we prayed there," and pointed gently at her throat. The phones didn't ring, not once. But you want to know if it ended, right? It didn't. Nothing ends. Even now, weeks later, our phones occasionally show a single raised mole of a voicemail. There's never a number. The date is always the day before my mother died. The summer Marcy learned to row backward. When we press play, there's nothing but breath, and then a soft sound like someone setting shoes neatly by a door. We don't delete those. We save them. Not because we want to believe, but because we want evidence of what we stopped. On my kitchen wall I hung a printout of my liturgy in block letters. Tessa tattooed a barely visible line around each ankle, a thin ink bracelet that, if you squint, looks like surface tension. Some nights she texts me, edges check, I text back, dry nay. I leave my shoes by the door not as an offering, but as a reminder that I kept them. When patients tell me they hear the dead on their machines, I don't correct them with software. I ask them where they end. I'm a little evangelical about it now, the way survivors are about seatbelts. If love asks you to stop breathing, it isn't love. If a voice tells you you're outside, answer the doors you can lock. The lake keeps its records. So do we.